The topics are hot. The discussion is heated. And we're on fire. The First Take Podcast starts now.
Here's what's coming up on the First Take Podcast. How will the Pats respond after losing their first game of the season? Plus, are the Redskins now the best team in the NFC East? And what is Kobe's legacy now that he will officially retire after the season? That and so much more coming up on the podcast. Craziness. Hey, hope you all had a wonderful weekend. Another manic Monday in the NFL and the NBA. Thanks for starting your week with us here on First Take. Skip Bayless and Molly Karam here in Bristol. Stephen A. joins us from Philly. Morning, guys.
Good morning. How y'all doing? Hope y'all had a nice weekend.
We did, and I cannot wait to hear your comments on one Kobe Bryant. I know that's why you're in Philly, because this will be his last hurrah back in his home area tomorrow night against the Sixers.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. But we got some football to talk.
Yes, we do.
Oh, we do. We've got a lot to talk about. Let's work. What a game last night in Mile High in the snow. The Patriots suffered 2 losses. Brock Osweiler and the Broncos snapping the Pats' perfect season with an OT win, and Rob Gronkowski leaves with a knee injury. The good news, though, for Patriots fans, according to our Adam Schefter, the injury does not appear serious. Quite a game, Skip.
Yes.
What was your takeaway?
Molly, Stephen A. Smith. First, credit where it's due. C.J. Anderson was terrific and proved to have the best all-wheel drive in the snow last night, as he was virtually unstoppable. And then young Brock Osweiler made 3 late beyond his years throws. I give him credit because he was under a whole lot of pressure trying to replace Peyton Manning. But, and here's my bottom line, my final score of that game was refs 30, Tom Brady 24. Refs 30, Tom Brady 24. And we'll hear some comments from Tom Brady a little later in the show, and I'm going to quote him. He said he's never been more pissed off about a loss, and I have to believe some of that was caused by this officiating crew. And after a while, Mr. Smith, it began to feel to me in the fourth quarter and overtime as if this crew of referees was trying to get even with Tom Brady for beating the NFL in court over Deflategate. That's just how it felt. That's just my 2 cents from a distance. But I'll be the first to admit, Chris Harper's blunder opened the door, gave Denver life early in the fourth quarter. He's back catching a punt and muffed it because there's no Edelman and no Amendola. But now let me count the ways that the New England Patriots got robbed from their forward. Brady soon hit Keyshawn Martin. Somebody named Keyshawn Martin is playing receiver for the Patriots for 51 yards. And they call an extremely iffy holding call on the backup guard, Trey Jackson, on Von Miller. And Brady was furious about it because it was ticky-tack at best. Then 5:22 left. New England up 21-17. Pat's trying to kill the clock. It gets to 3rd and 5 at the 25. Brady right on schedule to Gronkowski for 10 yards. And they call a bogus offensive pass interference, a push-off on Gronkowski, who was simply, the defender initiated the contact on the play, and Gronkowski just bounced off him. He didn't push off him. And worst of all, with 1:25 remaining, Denver, 2nd and goal from the 7. Osweiler gets sacked, -8 yards. But they call a way off the ball hold on Patrick Chung in the end zone on Demaryius Thomas when he merely initiated legal contact. He did not grab jersey. You can't call that a hold. It's ticky-tack at best or at worst. And it changed the game. That all of a sudden you go from 3rd and goal from the 15 for Denver to 1st and goal from the 4-yard line, touchdown. And basically that turned the whole game. Then there was some late clock snafu where they let 30 seconds run off from 40 down to 10 seconds. The NFL sent an official note up to NBC in the booth saying, oh, they handled it correctly. I still don't know how they handled it correctly. I'm sorry, I can't figure it out because all of a sudden 40 seconds went down to 10 and they still couldn't stop Tom Brady from one of the late, great, clutch field goal drives you will ever see, which took us to overtime. And on the first play of overtime, right on schedule, Talib grabs Brandon LaFell, just flat out held him. Brady's doing the holding signal to the referees, and they don't throw the flag. At least it would have given them a first down. Again, they went 3 and out at that point. And all credit to Denver, but I'm calling it, congratulations, refs. New England is now 10-1. Your thoughts?
I think you're being a bit. I think you're being a bit extreme, but not false. Let me explain. I think that you're right, particularly the last two, because I charted it down. The 5-22, the 3rd and 5, the push off on Gronk, I thought was bogus. The holding penalty by Chung with 1:25 left, I thought that was bogus. You're absolutely right about that, Skip Bayless. There's no disputing it. There's no doubt about it. But I don't think it's about the officiating. I think it's about the league office and the ticky-tack manner in which they're now forcing the officials to officiate the game, which is something the great Ray Lewis has complained about repeatedly. He talks about all the time. Skip Bayless, he comes on my radio show every Monday at 2:30. And I'm telling you right now, you can't bring up one single situation involving a penalty against a defensive player that doesn't get Ray Lewis up in a tizzy, going off about how the rules changes have contaminated the game of football and made it worse, because he basically challenges why anybody on the collegiate or even the prep level should be even interested in playing defense with the way that the NFL has instituted the new rules and regulations. So complaining about the officials in yesterday's situation, I wouldn't say to you, Skip, that they weren't penalties. I think they were penalties, but it's penalties based on what the officials are being forced to call by the NFL league office, as opposed to the officials just making bogus calls. Listening to Chris Collinsworth last night, particularly on that one with 1:25 left, one of the things he said is, yeah, it's ticky-tack or whatever, but those are the rules, you know, and that's what you have going on here. And so I think when you look at it from that perspective, your ire is misguided. It's aimed in the direction of these officials, as opposed to being aimed in the direction of the NFL league office, because they're the ones that have instituted these rules. Having said all of that, it doesn't negate the fact that Brock Osweiler looked good, that C.J. Anderson looked good, that Ronnie Hillman had a touchdown run, that Emmanuel Sanders had a couple of big-time plays, including a 39-yard catch en route to setting up that touchdown. The fact of the matter is that the Denver Broncos showed up and did what they needed to do with Brock Osweiler as their quarterback, as opposed to Peyton Manning. It wasn't great. There were mistakes on both sides of the ball. But in the end, what it comes down to is that, as far as I'm concerned, Skip, it's a typical game. In every game, we find situations where we're looking at calls these days and we feel something is bogus. It didn't stop the New England Patriots from winning their first 10 games. It just stopped them from winning the 11th. So be it. It is what it is. And that's what happened. I picked Denver to win this game. I'm happy that they won the game and that we don't have to discuss the Patriots running the table anymore, because that's not the situation. But again, I do agree with you. You're not wrong with what you pointed out. I thought all those calls were bogus. I just believe that you're aiming your ire at the officials when I think it's in large part due to the league office. They're the ones who have messed up this game. They got guys forcing guys to go low and take out people's knees so we can avoid fines and all of this other stuff. I mean, you know, because they're concerned about the whole concussion issue, you know, and all of that. That's what's going on here. And they've changed the focus for defenders, and they've changed the complexion of football and what we know it to be. I think the officials are at the mercy of their employers, and that's what's going on here.
At first, I was about to leap upon your statement and agree with you, because I thought you were going in the direction of the league office should be blamed because they ordered this officiating crew to look a little harder at New England, especially in crunch time. But you just went big picture about, oh, they're just calling everything a little closer this year. I'm sorry, but I watch too much football. I don't remember one game this year that had that many calls go against a team that was hanging on for dear life, especially after it lost Gronkowski and the air and sort of the spirit went out of the Patriots and they were just clinging. You know, remember, they went into the fourth quarter with a 21-7 lead. And I don't think you predicted that Dante Hightower would go out for New England, but quick stat. Once he went out for New England, when he was playing, Dante Hightower, their best run stopper because he can run from sideline to sideline. Denver, to that point, had 15 rushes for only 43 yards. After he was gone, 17 for 136 yards. So all of a sudden, without Jamie Collins, who still is out with some mysterious illness, and without Hightower, Listen, New England's not New England anymore without those two, because they can run, they can hit, they can make plays, and all of a sudden your two best defensive playmakers are gone. That's fine, okay? They were just clinging for dear life. But when Gronkowski went out, I thought that the Patriots would just fold up in spirit, and I got to give props. I know you think I overprotect Tom Brady on the show, but listen, that field goal drive, throwing to Scott Chandler and Brandon LaFell, it's like, this is beyond great. This is really sensational stuff, and it's going to get lost in the shuffle because, to your credit, you did pick Denver to win this game, and they did. By hook or crook, they won this game, and they are right back in contention for home field advantage in the AFC. Now, with just 2 losses to New England's 1, obviously Cincinnati has 2 losses.
Well, you're right about all of that. And listen, I mean, we could play around and all this stuff. But, you know, who didn't know that Tom Brady was going to put them in position to get that game-time field goal, to send it into overtime? I'm watching the game last night, Skip, and I remember when the pass was completed to Emmanuel Sanders, and I'm like, what the hell y'all running down the field for?
Yep.
There's too much time on the clock. You better milk that down when you score, Tom Brady doesn't get in a position to drive them downfield.
Yep.
Because he most certainly would do it, because he's just the best right now. Let's just call it what it is.
You.
I mean, ain't no debating about that. Okay? But with that being said, let's also understand something here, Skip. I'm looking at a guy in Brock Osweiler, in his second start, going out there, even once Chung got called for the holding penalty or whatever. You still had to connect to Bubba Caldwell.
And he did.
You still found yourself in a pressurized situation against an experienced New England defense with Bill Belichick as its architect. All of those things still had to ring true. And so not only that, there was a holding penalty on the part of Denver that pushed their goal line back. You understand? I think it was like a 3rd and 17, if I remember correctly, something along those lines. My point to you is that Osweiler still made that throw. He still connected. He still ended up completing 23 or 42 passes for 270 yards. He still shows that in that weather, under those inclement conditions, that he's got an arm on him, an arm that we've all challenged and speculated that Peyton Manning is devoid of at this point in time in his career. So when we look at it from that perspective, I'm not taking away anything that you're saying in all seriousness, because I know you're right. You're right about the holding penalty. You're right about it, the Gronk push-off, the holding penalty by Patrick Chung, and all of that other stuff. But I can't take away what I saw Denver do with Osweiler, and I can't take away from the fact that you could say in terms of quantity that you might not have seen that before in terms of those amount of penalties in that situation. But there have been 1 or 2 calls in the game this year with quite a few teams that could have went the other way, that had us all shaking our heads, looking at the officials saying, what the hell are they doing? And in some way, shape, or form, we thought it impacted the outcome. I'll leave it at that because my voice is still messed up and all that stuff.
Okay.
You know that. But
you sound great to me. You were celebrating too much on your Denver pick last night, right? Okay, last quick point.
Not celebrating.
I opened my first salvo by saying this, and I'm going to repeat it. The kid Osweiler showed me a lot last night. He showed me guts and poise late in that game, and he showed me why John Elway clearly is pushing for Brock Osweiler to be the new quarterback as they go forward into the future of the Denver Broncos. And it seems like it's coming more from Elway than even from Kubiak, but I get it now. That showed me a lot because he could have come undone under the late pressure. He did not.
Good point. And no one embodies next man up like New England. The Broncos now 9-2 in good position to get a bye. An update in the schedule. The Pats Week 14 game against Houston, who's 6-5, will be moved into primetime on Sunday Night Football. The game originally slated was Seattle and Baltimore. A huge win, meanwhile, for the Redskins, taking down the Giants 20-14. Boy, was it ugly. The G-men didn't even score until the 4th quarter. Washington moves up a spot and are now tied for first place with New York at 5-6. Struggling Philly is a game back at 4-7 with Dallas in last at 3-8. Stephen A., how shocked were you by Washington's win yesterday?
I'm shocked because Kirk Cousins is looking better. He's looking like he's improving. And even though he's the quintessential backup, as the one and only Brian Billick stated last week, in the end, I can't ignore 20 for 29 for 302 yards with a TD and not a single interception. Now, obviously, to some degree, that speaks against the Giants' defense, who I think has been suspect throughout this season. But I can't take credit away from Kirk Cousins. And Skip Bayless, didn't you love seeing Deshaun Jackson catch that deep 63-yard touchdown
Did
pass?
my heart good.
Didn't it make you think about? Didn't it make you think about Chip Kelly and the Philadelphia Eagles and how Chip Kelly surely didn't need this guy? I mean, he only had 2 receptions on the game, but that one was all it took. Because again, just having his presence out there spreads the field for them as well. So I look at it from that perspective. Alfred Morris only had 78 yards rushing. You'd like to see him do a bit more for the Redskins, but Kirk Cousins is efficient. The Washington Redskins defense does put a hat on you. Eli Manning was incredibly disappointed. He reverted to the old Eli that Skip jokes about time and time again in terms of one who had led the league in interceptions on 3 separate occasions in his career. Odell Beckham Jr. This kid he's a bad boy. He's a stud, man, and you just fantasize about what if Victor Cruz was healthy along with Ruben Randle and Odell Beckham Jr. Could you imagine how lethal this Giants offense would be? But then you look at the Giants running game and you're thinking about Vereen at 15 yards and Jennings at 14 yards and, Darkwa at 2 yards. I mean, we're talking 33 yards rushing total for the game. You're the New York Giants. That's just not going to cut it. But you got to give a testament to the Redskins, their defense showing up. You got to give a testament to Kirk Cousins, who didn't blow it. And now here the Redskins are tied for first place and deservedly so, because they're playing smash mouth football. And I give credit where credit is due for that with Jay Gruden and his staff. He's got them playing some football right now, and they seem to have an elevated level of confidence. They might not be a team to be ignored at this point.
I think not. And
they beat the Giants twice now.
Yeah. So, wait, they've beaten the Giants twice. I think the Giants won the first game, right?
No. Yeah, you know what? I'm not even sure. I got to look that up.
That's
I forgot
about that. I think the Giants won the first game 32-21, but that's okay. All right.
Oh, yeah.
All right. I need to start out by going Kirk Cousins on the 2 Giants fans on this show, Stephen A. and this woman to my right here named Molly. You like that? You like that? Because I got to admit, I liked it. I really did like it.
You think I liked it? They almost pitched a shutout. It was embarrassing.
That's sarcastic.
We just had that one nice catch. That was the only bright spot.
Well, I heard you in our pre-show meeting, and Molly was not happy with her Giants.
No.
Shouldn't be happy because I got to tell you, I was shocked by that. I know that Kirk Cousins has been really good at home and really not good on the road, except for the game at Atlanta, which went to overtime, during which he threw a pick-6 that lost the game, but that's a whole other issue. And the Giants, it felt to me like, just didn't show up yesterday because they had beaten the Redskins pretty easily at home. It was 32-14 before a late kickoff return, made it 32-21. And again, Chris Culliver, maybe their best corner or one of their best corners, certainly a starting corner, tears up his knee in practice last week, and it's like Eli came out like, we got this. There's some kid named Quentin Dunbar starting at cornerback. He was a career receiver at Florida, undrafted, a rookie who caught 111 balls as a receiver at Florida, and all of a sudden he's thrust into a starting cornerback role, and half the time he's on Odell Beckham Jr. yesterday, and I'm thinking, Torch City for the Redskins, who haven't been great on defense anyway, especially against the pass, and all of a sudden, Bad Eli emerges again, and it was that Eli that I just can't stand.
Jekyll and Hyde.
Yeah, it's that shrugging, what the heck, okay, so I threw another interception kind of Eli. The first 2 were not all his fault. There was some bad luck involved in 2 tip balls early. They got away with those, but that one that he threw to this kid, Quentin Dunbar, who picked it off in the end zone that was a little behind Randall in the middle of the third quarter, that could have really gotten him out of the hole and back in the game with time to spare. You just can't do that. You can't. Eli's better than that against this team on this stage with a chance to separate from the NFC East pack. You win this game, and we're all having the conversation that, well, looks like the Giants got this.
That's what hurt the most.
I know. It was just terrible because they go 3 for 15 on third down against Quentin Dunbar at cornerback. You're kidding me. So Again, that's a big egg laid by the New York Football Giants. At home, Washington's been very good. And now I look at Washington's schedule, and if Kirk Cousins can figure out how to win a couple of road games, they've got at Chicago, at Philly, at Dallas, all you would say at this point, you could win a couple of those games, I think. Even Kirk Cousins could win a couple of those. And if they do, they'll probably win the NFC East. That's a shocking development to me.
It is a shocking development, especially when you could. But what's more shocking to me is that this is the 27th ranked defense against the rush, and they held the Giants to 33 yards. Now, Giants don't have anybody that knock your socks off. I mean, when you saw that fantastic feature that Josina Anderson did on the running back for the New York Giants. It wasn't Shane Vereen. It's Jennings, Rashad Jennings. I'm sorry, with him and his dad. It was a wonderful piece. And then you found yourself rooting for him to want to go out there and have a big game, rushing the football, because they talked about how his dad wasn't going to be able to make the game. But obviously you'd be watching from their nearby home in Virginia, and watching and looking forward to his son performing. And then he goes out, he rushes for 14 yards, and Vereen only rushes for 15 yards, and this is against the 27th ranked defense. Seems to make no sense. The Giants, on a lot of occasions, just leaves you scratching your head. You're like wondering, what in God's name are these guys doing? And so I found myself looking at them yesterday, not being able to generate anything whatsoever on the ground. And I knew Odell Beckham Jr. would have a decent day. But you just said to yourself, well, you didn't expect Eli Manning to revert to old Eli. And then you certainly didn't expect this running game to be as paltry as it was. So I have no explanation for the Giants, but maybe that's the problem with them. We never have an explanation for the Giants, on the good side or the bad side.
Hail to the Redskins, I got to say it.
Leave it to five-time NBA champion Kobe Bryant to upstage the National Football League on an NFL Sunday. Social media blew up when Kobe announced his retirement at the end of the season on the Players Tribune website. In a letter addressed to the game of basketball, Kobe says, "You gave a 6-year-old boy his Laker dream, and I'll always love you for it. But I can't love you obsessively for much longer. This season is all I have left to give. My heart can take the pounding, my mind can handle the grind, but my body knows it's time to say goodbye." Kobe, third all-time on the NBA scoring list, will hang him up after this season. Stephen A., how surprising was his announcement right now?
I wasn't that surprised. I was more sad than surprised. As far as I'm concerned, it came obviously a little bit too late. But it is what it is. He's earned the right to do that. It was something that, he came into this season with the mentality that he was trying to discover what exactly he had left. He knew the work that he put in. He knew he was getting tired of the conditioning and what it took to be ready. But the reward would be him being able to go out on that court and perform the way we're accustomed to seeing Kobe Bryant perform. And it didn't take long to realize that he just couldn't do that anymore, that his body wouldn't allow him to be what we were accustomed to seeing him be. He thought that he would have more left because the last 2 years he had played a grand total of 41 games, 6 a couple of years ago, just 35 last year or so. And he just thought that he would have an opportunity to do more. Even though it was his 20th year in the league, it was really like his 18th because he didn't have to play those previous 2 years. But you got to remember, he was accustomed to being a champion, or at least a championship contender. He's a 5-time champion. He's been in numerous NBA conference finals as well as NBA finals, been in 7 NBA finals. And so a lot of times he had those extra seasons. And in the end, he thought that he would have more left, and maybe he'd even entertain playing an additional season beyond this one. And when he quickly realized that wasn't the case, one could surmise he hearkened back in his own mind to what he had told me on many, many occasions, privately and publicly. And that was that he would never stick around and be just an average player. He wouldn't have to be told by others it was over. He would recognize it himself. And I think that's the reason that the announcement came, Skip, right now, because he heard the rumblings. He heard what people were saying. But more importantly, he looked in the mirror and he knew what he saw and what he felt. And as a result, just letting everybody know that he's not walking around lying to himself, fooling himself, that it was over, he knows is enough for him. My preference, as I echoed to him on several occasions over the last week, both privately and publicly, was that he retire immediately and go, because I don't believe that Jim Buss deserves him. But nevertheless, he said that he would never walk out. He said, you know me, I'm a ride and die kind of dude, and I'm not gonna jump ship and abandon the troops like that. I'm going to complete this season come hell or high water. I don't care if I got to work out in the gym, we're practicing with them, if I got to be on the court with them during games, if I got to talk to them off the court, whatever it takes. I'm not going to abandon my troops. That's what he said. And so that's his mentality. He has a right to do that, has a right to feel that way. And all we could do is wish him nothing but the best moving forward and thank him for the wonderful years that he's given us, because he gave us a lot.
Yes, he did. By the way, you said last week you wanted him to stop now, in part so he might save himself to play one more year elsewhere with a contender, right?
If he chose to do that, fine.
Okay.
But what I was saying is but I had no problem with him retiring and saying, this just ain't worth it anymore. It's time for me to go.
I got it. So you're sure this is it? There's no other team left here. This is the end. I'm with you on this.
It's over.
Okay.
It's over.
And I hope Kobe realizes, and I'm sure he does, he didn't fail this year. His body failed him. It's as simple as that. And the shock is not that he's announcing his retirement now. My shock was watching Kobe in game 1, 2, 3. I thought game 1 he looked okay. Game 2 and 3, I started to say, wait a minute. That doesn't look right. And finally, his body betrayed him. And you know as well as anybody, Stephen A. He went through the ruptured Achilles and both knees and then the shoulder. It was just too much surgery to bounce back from after all those literally, effectively millions of NBA miles on his body compared to other greats who have played. And I loved it that he chose now, and I think he chose now for a couple of reasons. But number one is you're going to be there tomorrow night in Philadelphia. I think Kobe wanted it known ahead of his last game back in his home. Can we call it his hometown or home area? I guess he's not from inner city Philadelphia, but what is it?
No, he's not.
Lower Marion out on the
Lower Marion.
the main
Lower
line.
Marion.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So I think it will mean a whole lot to Kobe Bryant to get to do this tomorrow night with everybody knowing full well this is the end. This is his last trip home, because they're obviously going to only play the one game in Philly in the Eastern Conference. And again, he loves the Players Tribune because he, I think, recently invested in it. So it was a great stage for him to do this on his website. And I got to congratulate Kobe also on the way he wrote his retirement announcement. It's an open letter to Dear Basketball, and he wrote it in sort of free-form verse, not rhyming verse, but just verse. It's beautifully done. It is highly creative, it's artful, and it indicates to me what a great mind Kobe has beyond basketball, and I hope we see some of that mind at work, and I'm assuming we will, in the near future. Whatever creative vein he wants to pursue, be it movie making with Spike Lee, who knows what it will be. But Kobe has an extremely deep and creative mind that we don't always get to see just in the basketball context. And then Stephen A., I'm happy for him because, look, Kobe's got a big ego like any other superstar does, and he's one of the all-time greats, obviously, and he deserves this. He needs to be celebrated. He needs to be honored. He needs to be thanked at stop after stop after stop. And if he held off until after the year's over and then he decided, you know what, this just isn't working anymore, he would miss all those opportunities to be thanked by all those away crowds. And trust me, he'll get a lot of gifts, and the gifts won't mean anything to him because I'm sure he's got plenty of money, but the thank yous from those crowds, the ovations from those crowds will mean everything to Kobe Bryant, and they should. So I'm happy he chose to do it now because we all agree it's over.
Well, there's two things. Number one, I'm not happy now because I wish he had announced this before New York, because I think
fair.
Madison Square Garden would have shown a level of appreciation to him that would have rivaled any place, anywhere. That's number one. Number two, And I'm going to hold on to this, Skip. I'm not going to change my mind. I'm not playing games. I'm very, very adamant about this. I think that the Lakers as an organization, how they allowed this man's career to end, I don't think that should go unnoticed. And I don't think that should go unspoken about. And I don't mean the Lakers organization in its entirety. I'm just talking about Jim Buss. I'm talking about people that allow their emotions to get in the way. I'm talking about Jeannie Buss, who loves Kobe, adores Kobe, and you know, will always have a place in her heart and in her organization for Kobe, who could have made things better for him by dealing with her brother and failed to do so. For Kobe Bryant to go out 27 wins one year, 21 wins last year, 2-14 this year, to be bereft of talent the way that they were, to give him absolutely nothing to work with so he could at least go out on a competitive platform. I just think it's an indictment against what the Lakers organization has regressed into. And I can't say enough about that. That's part of the sadness with all of this, because you see, Skip, if you were playing with better players, you might not have been as exposed. And you might have been able to gloss over some of those things that Father Time had taken away from him. And you still would have been out there, and there would have been a zest to perform without the burden of having to try and carry a load you simply weren't physically able to carry any longer. But unfortunately, he kept trying to have to go out there, and it was a way for the Lakers organization to make money and to get people to walk through the turnstiles, because you had nothing to offer but a guy past the age of 35, coming off an Achilles one year, knee injuries and shoulder injuries the next year, and ultimately leaving him with little to nothing to work with. And I will never, ever forget how, and I said this to Kobe, by the way, you know, and that's response, that communication is between he and I, but I'll tell you what I said. It's a travesty what was done to him as it all ended. And it's pretty damn close to unforgivable, to be quite honest with you, what Jim Buss allowed the Lakers to do to this man as his career waned. It's really, really sad.
I hear what you say. You've said it many, many times on this show, but I feel compelled to defend Jim Buss a little, not a lot.
Please.
It's possible, and I can certainly make the case, a strong case, that he put too much stock in what was left of Kobe Bryant, because they gave this man his money. What is, I don't even know, I'm losing track. Is he $25 million this year?
25. It's $25 million this year. It was 23.5 last year. 48.5 overall for 2 years.
That's a lot of money, and I'm assuming that Jim Buss was still so in awe of Kobe Bryant, not only as a box office draw, but as a potential free agent magnet for great players to come join him in L.A., that Jim Buss kept saying to himself, we'll be okay because we still got Kobe, and he's still our draw at the box office and on the free agent market. And as you know, that just didn't happen. Now, you can take all kinds of issues with the drafting, and I already did, not in 2020 hindsight, but I said D'Angelo Russell's not that guy. He's not that pick in the draft, and he hasn't been so far. Maybe he'll grow up and figure it out, but he hasn't yet. So that didn't help Kobe at all to have somebody to run the show. This rookie is not ready to run that show. So, again, I think Jim Buss was as shocked as we were, if not more so, at what he didn't see from Kobe in games 2, 3, 4, and 5. So can you condemn him for saying, I think Kobe's going to be great this year?
Yes. No. That's not the reason you condemn him. Please don't get me wrong. And I'm going to be fair to Jim Buss in slicing him up. And let me explain to you how. Skip Bayless, when you talk about the money that he gave Kobe, and you're talking about him placing that faith in Kobe, did it ever occur to you that he had to place that faith in Kobe because of what he was incapable of doing in terms of acquiring free agents to want to come to Los Angeles? Now, we've heard Nelly and others allude to how much of a role Kobe may have played in guys not wanting to come to L.A. That, well, you know, that Nelly knows, and that to some degree anyway, and that's fair. He's not wrong. What I'm saying to you is that I repeatedly asked this question over and over and over again. Kobe Bryant, his DNA identical to what it has always been. If Dr. Jerry Buss was still alive, God rest his soul, are we talking about the Lakers being devoid or bereft of talent? No, we're not. We're not talking about a Phil Jackson being gone in favor of Mike Brown. We're not talking about Phil Jackson's return being squashed in favor of Mike D'Antoni. We're not talking about a Dwight Howard who literally told you, look, you said this is my franchise moving forward. I would like Phil Jackson to come here and help me be a better player. And instead, you brought Mike D'Antoni. We're not talking about that. We're not talking about prospective free agents coming to work out for the Los Angeles Lakers, seeing Jeannie Buss and Jim Buss in the same gymnasium, but on opposite ends of the court from one another, with a dysfunctional environment literally pervading the basketball organization like a virus. We're not talking about all of those things. We're not talking about an ownership that nobody trusts, that agents laugh at, that people look at and say, will you please move aside and let Mitch Kupchak do his job? Will you please move aside and get Jerry West to come back here, and Jerry West with his protege Mitch Kupchak can rebuild this franchise? Will you please do those things? Now, I know Jerry West was on the record coming to the defense of Jim Buss. I respectfully disagree with one of the greatest executives to have ever played this game. Because if Jerry West was completely honest, he would have told you the whole story. I can't repeat the stories because it would be personally inappropriate for me to repeat the stories of how Jim Buss exercised such a dereliction of duty. It completely compromised the success of Laker Nation and the Lakers organization. And all of that was while you had Kobe to lean on to get people to walk through the turnstiles. The Lakers need to give folks back their money based on the product that they put out there over the last 3 years. And it's a damn shame because Mitch Kupchak is a good GM. And there's a lot of people within the Lakers organization that are very good and are very competent at their job that had to succumb to the will of a guy in Jim Buss who, by the way, I believe actually knows a thing or two about basketball. His knowledge is not the problem. It was the fact that he allowed his personal feelings to get in the way of what would automatically facilitate the success of the Lakers. And in this particular instance, Kobe Bryant. I am making the accusation that Jim Buss literally wasted the last 3 to 4 years of Kobe Bryant's career. Even if Kobe Bryant were healthy, he still had no shot to win a championship because of the decisions Jim Buss facilitated making. That is the crime in all of this. And I don't care what anybody says. I'm not asking y'all. I'm telling y'all. And any time that Jim Buss wants to sit there and debate, don't go to USA Today or somebody else where they can print your quotes. Come on up to the big house. Come on up there. Let's have that debate in front of the masses. He'd never do it because he'd have to answer for some of the decisions that he's made that wasted away the waning years of Kobe Bryant's career. It's unforgivable. It's unforgivable. And I will never deviate from that position. I don't care who asks me to.
So you do live in the big house. We know that, right? Is that what you're suggesting?
This is the big house.
This is
first
the big
take.
House. All right.
This is the big house. First take. That's right. In the big house.
I got it. I got it. Bottom line, what was a sad exit for Kobe Bryant can now turn into a heartwarming swan song for Kobe Bryant.
He's a legend. He's going to be sorely...
Upon which by the way, one which Jim Buss and the Lakers will profit off of, by the way. Let's not forget that.
Sure.
What's better than all pumpkin everything? Everything you need on GoPhone from AT&T. For $40 a month after a $5 auto refill discount, you get unlimited talk, text, and data usage with the first 1.5 gigabytes at high speed. So you can post pumpkin lattes, stream pumpkin parties, share sweet nothings over pumpkin stuffing. Okay, maybe I went a little too far, but it's unlimited, so you can too.
Go to the closest AT&T store and ask for GoPhone for $40 a month after a $5 auto refill discount with no annual contract and no credit check. Plus, get unlimited talk, text, and data usage with the first 1.5 gigabytes at high speed. AT&T, mobilizing your world.
First payment is $45. $5 discount applied to monthly rate plan charge upon enrollment in auto refill. After first 1.5 gigabytes, get data speeds up to 128 kilobytes per second. Additional charges and restrictions apply. See store for details.
Meanwhile, Russell Wilson threw for a career-high 5 TD passes. Older Jermaine Kearse and Doug Baldwin and the Seahawks held on for a 39-30 win over the Steelers in a huge victory that put Seattle back in the playoff picture. However, the Seahawks did lose Jimmy Graham for the season, who'll have surgery on his patellar tendon. Stephen A., were you encouraged or discouraged by what you saw from the Hawks?
I was sort of discouraged, even though the Seahawks won the football game. I was sort of discouraged simply because even though the Steelers' offense is prolific, and we all know that with Bryant, with Antonio Brown, with Heath Miller, these boys, even with D'Angelo Williams running instead of Le'Veon Bell, the fact is the Legion of Boom is supposed to be the Legion of Boom, and they're not supposed to look ordinary. Now, they did have 4 interceptions on the day. They did have a couple of key turnovers that worked to their advantage. Their offense stepped up, particularly when they were up 32-30 after Mike Tomlin decided not to go for a 4th and goal and instead elected to kick the field goal. Then they connected, with Wilson connected with Doug Baldwin for the 80-yard touchdown pass with about 2:01 left. That basically sealed the deal, which was very unfortunate. But up until that moment in time, I thought that the Seahawks defense looked relatively ordinary. It's amazing to me because they still have the speed, they have the tackling ability, they're ferocious, they're vicious, and in the second half, they really amped up the pressure on Big Ben Roethlisberger before he had to depart the game for the concussion, and Landry Jones had to come in there. But I'm just one of those guys that looks at Seattle and their defense, whereas it was once dominant, I don't think it's intimidating anybody right now, which surprises me. So because of that, in light of the fact that they won the game, I'm still going to tell you that I walked away feeling a bit less confident than them as opposed to more confident. Their offense has elevated in terms of the priority list, whereas the defense is dissipated to some degree. They're still talented, gifted, good, and all of that. But something is missing. I don't know if it's from the cornerback slot, Kerry Williams. I don't know whether it's him and he's not Byron Maxwell for that system, even though I believe he's better than Byron Maxwell. I don't know what it is. They're not getting to the quarterback enough. It just seems to me like something's missing. But the Steelers help, too. In the first quarter, you're going to fake a field goal attempt. I think that instead of this guy, Jordan Perry, being out there who usually gets the ball snapped to him for the field goal kicker to kick the football, bringing in Landry Jones, I think somebody was going to notice that. And Seattle picked up on it and they stopped it. And then when you had an opportunity to go for it on 4th and goal in the fourth quarter, maybe it was because Ben Roethlisberger was concussed. Maybe that had something to do with you electing not to be risque. I don't know what Mike Tomlin was, what the thought process was at that particular moment in time. But it just didn't end up to the Steelers' benefit. I think that had a lot to do with why they lost this game. But we both predicted that they would lose this game to Seattle. We thought Seattle would find a way to win, and that's exactly what they did. But I expected the defense to be a bit more stout, and that's not what I'm seeing right now from the Seahawks, from the Legion of Boom.
By the way, on Mike Tomlin, I had no issue with his choice to go ahead and kick the field goal, maybe because Ben was concussed and we didn't know it, but I still thought it was the percentage play. It just didn't work out. But the fake field goal, I got to blame Mike Tomlin for that. Remember, it was at the quarter change from the first to the second quarter.
Yep.
So you allow Seattle to see your personnel during the the stoppage of play. What are you doing? What are you thinking? It's just such a bad idea, so poorly executed by Landry Jones, who's got to be smarter than that. And then you don't see Jeremy Lane, who just it's like, thank you very much, and I'm going to run it the other way a long ways. And it really changed the game because it was 3-0 Pittsburgh at that point. You could have at least kicked the field goal. I don't know. Why do you need to trick Seattle? Because Seattle has not been Seattle. So now to your point about the team that you picked to win the Super Bowl. I'm with you. It's so weird watching them because every few plays, Cam Chancellor will make a play where I'll say, wow, that's like Legion of Boom. That's like old days great. That's scary great. Then every fifth or sixth play, Richard Sherman will make a play and I'll say, wow, that's like great old days Richard Sherman. Wow, that looks good. And then at the end of the game, I look at the totals. Ben Roethlisberger threw for 456 yards. Now, he's great at what he does, and he's got an aerial circus of receivers. We get that. But 456 is a lot to throw for on that defense in that stadium with that loud of a crowd. And when I look at 5 of 11 on third down, it felt like Ben could just kind of stand back there and kind of do what I think I'll throw this one. I think I'll throw it over there. I think I'll throw it to, oh, he's open. I'll throw it over there. And he threw one ball to Antonio that Richard Sherman did pick off as his first interception of the year. And I thought Richard Sherman got away with a blatant downfield shove because Antonio Brown went completely down on the shove. And Ben just ended up throwing like a pop fly to Richard Sherman with nobody around him, and he caught it and ran it back a good ways. So that was a key play early in the fourth quarter of that game. So I'm not sold either. And I look down their schedule. They're back in wild card business because they now inhabit the second wild card slot to Green Bay at 7-4, now Seattle at 6-5. But I look down your schedule here. They go to Minnesota next Sunday. No cakewalk. Then they finish at Arizona, and in between they've got the St. Louis Rams, who have been a division nemesis of both Arizona and Seattle already this year. So I don't think this is, you're not out of these woods yet up in the Pacific Northwest. So I didn't like what I saw either. I was kind of shocked by the outcome, even though we both picked Seattle to win. It didn't feel, Russell Wilson was great, but the defense not so much.
Let's also keep in mind, Skip, that they gave up 201 receiving yards to a guy by the name of Marcus Wheaton, who can ball, no question about that. But when did we ever think we'd see the day where the Legion of Boom gave up 200 yards receiving to any wide receiver? I mean, that was shocking in and of itself. And, also let's keep in mind, Jimmy Graham is out. He got himself injured, and so that even though I believe this kid Wilson is better in their system at the tight end spot than Graham, I think that might end up working to their benefit, to be quite honest with you. But I just think that right now, just looking at them, I'm not pleased with what I'm seeing from Seattle's defense, and I'm thinking that they're going to have to rely more and more. And by the way, we make so much noise, negatively speaking, about Russell Wilson. This is a top 10 quarterback in the league, Skip. This kid can play.
I'm with you.
He's skilled. There's so much debating about him. We really, really need to stop. The kid is gifted, and he finds a way to extend plays, make plays, and he does everything that he's supposed to do for that offense and then some. I'll give credit where credit is due, and you know how suspect I am about the Steelers secondary.
I do.
They can't defend a tight end to save their life, and the receivers can get theirs too. Their passing attack is highly suspect, which is why I walked into this game with reservations about the Steelers to begin with.
Yeah, I got you. Just when Russell Wilson was starting to figure out Jimmy Graham, I still think it's a big loss because Jimmy Graham's just a difference maker, and all the other receivers to me are just guys. I'm sorry, they're all okay, but they're just guys. This guy can really change a game, and they were starting to figure out how to change games with him, and now he's gone.
Back to the NFL. So, after the Eagles, Cowboys, and Giants all took L's this week and the Redskins got a W, here is how the NFC's playoff picture looks as we speak. The Redskins and Giants are tied atop the division with losing records at 5-6, followed by the Eagles at 4-7 and the Cowboys at 3-8 without their quarterback, Tony Romo, again. This division has had a different champion every year for the last decade. We welcome in our NFL analyst, Eric Allen, who played 7 years in this division. Now, keyword is now. Who do you like in the NFC?
Let me say, it's like same time next week for us. Because right at this moment, every week, we put this man on the hot seat.
And it's hot.
And every week, it changes.
It does.
It does.
It does change. It does change. But again, let's go back a little bit. A conversation that me and my dear friend Skip had about the mighty Tony Romo-led Dallas Cowboys.
You deserve this.
And again, I am not, right away, you never like to see anyone get hurt. And again, I am a huge fan of Tony Romo. I think he's a fantastic football player, he's a leader. But his first game should have been on Thanksgiving, so he had that extended break. Because what did we talk about? We talked about that rest. that he needed. And unfortunately, for Tony, got hurt. But again, the Panthers are a legit, real football team and thought they would kick the Dallas Cowboys' butt. So let's move on from that.
Although, by the way, I thought I was going to get Tony Romo back, and I got arts and craftsy Tony Romo. I did.
Great.
Well, I did.
Did you see the press conference?
I don't know who that guy was.
The press conference afterwards, talking about, the rhythm wasn't there. He wasn't able to see things. It was a little faster than he thought. So all of those things added up to me was you brought him back too fast. If you bring him back on Thanksgiving, he gets those extra days prepared for the next week. So again,
throw him into the fire against the Panthers?
Yeah, got to get it done.
Right.
But the Washington Redskins right now, 4-1 at home, playing good football. Jay Gruden seems to have kind of pushed all his chips to the middle of the table and said, hey, you know what? You either riding with us or you're going to roll off the bus with us. And at this point, he has 2 more home games. You look at the schedule, Dallas, without Romo, 2 times, okay? Got Chicago, Buffalo, and Philadelphia. That's a winnable back end of the schedule for this football team. You got Kirk Cousins, you have Deshaun Jackson, who is now back to doing what he loves to do, just flying over defenses, making big plays. Again, and then defensively, I trust their defense more than I trust the Giants' defense. And I think that's really the big cue there. On this little run that they've been going on, defensively has been really the anchor for this football team. Love their secondary. They have outstanding play in the secondary, as we saw yesterday against the New York Giants. And I just don't think the New York Giants have the sauce that they usually have. And that sauce is a pretty good running game. Eli making great plays, but they always have an outstanding front that gets after you with just 4. They have 1 sack. This is a football team that had the opportunity to put the Redskins away in the closet. Okay?
They did.
And they didn't. And I don't think they're going to do it. I don't think they have the personality or the personnel to be able to accomplish what they set out to do last Sunday.
You agree? They're done?
No, I don't think they're done.
Not done.
No, I don't think they're done.
All right. Stephen A.
Well, I can't say the Giants are done because really what it comes down to is Eli Manning against Kirk Cousins. And I refuse to give Kirk Cousins the edge in that category. Now, obviously, when you look at the New York Giants, they came into the game plus 12 in the turnover differential category, and they didn't force any against Washington yesterday. That's a problem. Washington's got that next man up mentality because they've been dealing with a bevy of injuries. But Jordan Reed had a big game yesterday, and obviously their defense came to play. If Washington can continue to rely on their defense, it can change the complexion of things because it gives Kirk Cousins more opportunities to make mistakes and still get away with it because they'll be in a position to win football games. Whereas with the New York Giants, particularly with their problems on the offensive line, which negates their running game, as evidenced by yesterday, rushing for just 33 yards against the 27th ranked defense against the rush in the NFL in Washington. If you're the New York Giants, you've got to make amends for that. You've got to find a way to rectify that situation, and you've got to produce weapons outside of Eli to Odell Beckham Jr. You're just going to have to find a way to get other individuals involved. Again, what this comes down to me, however, is this. Even though the Redskins defense is playing well, I can't believe that will continue consistently. I have to give them the benefit of the doubt and say that if it did happen consistently, then the Redskins will be in a position to take this division. There's no question about that. But I'm not going to bet my money on that. I'm going to bet my money on them being good but not great, and how it's going to have to depend on Kirk Cousins to deliver the goods. And I'm going to be of the mindset that I don't believe Kirk Cousins will outduel Eli Manning for the NFC East crown. If that were to happen, then the Giants might need to look towards the future. Tom Coughlin might not be the guy to be the coach any longer because, once again, that will mark 6 years over the last 7 seasons that they will have missed the playoffs, which to me is entirely unacceptable. And so you have to look at it from that perspective. I think a lot's on the line for the New York Giants over these next 5 games. We're going to see what they're worth because they have no business losing this division to the Washington Redskins.
You both make great points. But, you know, I'm sitting here thinking.
Oh, gosh.
Oh, gosh. Wait.
Oh, I'm getting nervous.
You know what? If Tony Romo were still healthy,
He's not.
If he were. But But you know what?
What was that?
Late in that game against Carolina, I got to say, Matt Castle looked the best he's looked all year. I know it was a little garbage timey, but I thought Matt Castle looked pretty good. So wouldn't it be a fitting end to the NFC least? Wouldn't it be a fitting end if all of a sudden Matt Castle got on some miracle roll here and Dallas won out,
I love you,
beat the Redskins twice? Really but I'm serious. Wouldn't that be a great way to finish this off?
That would be great.
That would be great.
I don't think that statement by Skip is fair to me at all. Forget you, Eric. I'm the one that has to sit here listening to this drivel, and then after that he gets depressed, and I'm the guy that has to deal with the fallout. I don't like it at all. Now, if Ernestine were here, that would be different because I know she has to deal with it too. But without her, I'm the one that has to suffer when he sets himself up for this misery.
I cease and desist. It's over for the Dallas Cowboys.
All right, there you go. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
I deserve a hand. Now, back to the real question at hand. I cannot believe I'm saying this. The Washington Redskins are in the driver's seat.
They are.
They are. They're in the driver's seat. I look at your schedule. You're about to play the Giants.
Yeah.
You're about to play the Jets. It's a Giants home game, so that it'll be a Giants crowd. But the Jets are favored by 1 at the quote-unquote neutral site. You know, like, okay, Jets by 1. Then you go to Miami, should be able to win that game. But you got to face Carolina at home.
Thomas,
I know.
Josh.
And then you have to go to Minnesota, and Minnesota's got this formula figured out. They don't really need their quarterback because they're number 1 in rushing and they're number 2 in defense.
That's
so they
3 losses.
That's okay. And then the Eagles finish up. But if you lose those games and Kirk Cousins figures out how to win a game at Chicago, winnable, a game at Philadelphia,
winnable.
I'd say it's winnable. And a game at Dallas is eminently winnable.
Right? There you go.
Especially if Kirk Cousins could figure out, and he's 0-5 on the road now, but if he could figure out how to win 2 of those 3, I'm pretty sure Washington will represent the NFC East in the playoffs.
I think so.
Okay.
Because of schedule,
Can I ask a question?
right?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Can I ask a question? If both the Giants and the Redskins ended up 8-8, who gets the tiebreaker?
I don't know. They split. I don't know how that works.
That's the issue for me because I think
who would have the better division record? I don't know.
I believe that 8-8 is going to win this division.
Okay, but it would depend on who won the most division games. So it's hard to.
Yeah, it'd be a bunch of tiebreakers. We can figure
with those 3 games, you
can I make a prediction right here?
Yeah, please.
Can I make a prediction right here? I think both the Giants and the Redskins will both end up at 8-8.
Okay, then it'll depend how they get to 8 versus division opponents.
I don't think so. I think the Washington Redskins will find a way to win another game than the Giants. When you start talking about those 3 games, the Jets, and basically right now, without that defense, it's Eli, who we just saw throw 3-4 interceptions, him and Odell Beckham against the Jets secondary. I'm going to give nod to the Jets secondary. To Carolina's secondary, Josh Norman on Odell Beckham. I'm going with Josh Norman. And then the Minnesota Vikings playing keep away basically from Odell Beckham and Eli. So I think they're going to lose those 3 games. And so I think the Washington Redskins and Jay Gruden with all the quarterback
This is unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
We picked this going into the season. Unbelievable.
And the reason this is all mind-blowing to me is just 2 weeks back, 2 games back, the Redskins went to the Panthers, went to Carolina, and lost 44-16. But was that more of a statement about Carolina than about Washington? Maybe Washington wasn't that bad. Carolina's just
really good.
And they're good and they're on fire all at once.
Right. You mentioned we didn't mention one team in this whole debate.
Eagles.
Ooh, good point.
Yeah.
Good point. And they are only a game out of first place.
Yeah.
It seems like they are just light years away from anything else.
I'm with you.
Anytime you lose, it was a very hard loss. I don't think I've ever been so basically pissed off after a loss. And I think everyone felt the same way. So hopefully we can use that as motivation going forward. There's things across the board that we need to do a better job of, and we can do a better job of, and that's where our focus is going to be this week.
Powerful sound by Tom Brady. We learned last night that New England is actually not invincible or unbeatable. And just take a look at the injuries to Brady's bunch. The good news, though, is that Rob Gronkowski's knee injury appears to not be serious, according to our Adam Schefter. Eric Allen is still with us. Injuries piling up for New England. Now they have the 1 loss. How vulnerable are they moving forward?
They are vulnerable. It's going to take them a period of time before they adjust to the personnel. I think what's the most important is finding on offense a back who can complement LeGarrette Blount. Maybe James White. I'm not sure if he's shifty enough, like Deion Lewis that they use. They really need that mismatch in the slot or in the backfield that can come out, really shake a linebacker and get that linebacker so nervous that he's not responsible for his techniques and be ready for the run. And so they can run the football. And he's not on the roster right now. But he is going to be on the roster on the playoff run some way, somehow. This team, and this is the one thing I really appreciate about this football team. And this loss was difficult and hard, but now it's not about the undefeated. Let the Carolina Panthers, handle all that. Now it's about getting this team ready to make this Super Bowl run. And believe me, they're going to be able to do it. Offensively, they'll find a way. Someone's going to step up. Tom Brady had 3 touchdowns last night. He's still doing his thing. Defensively, that's what surprised me. With a young quarterback, Denver did a great job of moving the pocket. So the game plan against this quarterback wasn't something that they can go back and look at film and prepare for. It was something new. Brock, 6'8", mobile guy, played basketball in high school, was a great athlete. So that's something they have to get used to. But believe me, this team will be ready. No other team that I've ever prepared for or seen in my 20-plus years of football does a better job of getting ready for situational football. No one does it better than this bunch. And they will be ready. And this is a bump in the road, but everyone's saying, they're done. It's fool's gold. This team will be back and be prepared for whatever team they face in the playoffs.
Stephen A.
Well, obviously you've been listening to Skip. You've been hanging around him a little bit too much, Eric, because anytime one of his favorite teams or one of his favorite players go down, it's the end of the world. It's Armageddon. What the hell has this world come to? I haven't heard a single soul say that the New England Patriots are done. I haven't heard a single soul sit up there and say that, now, okay, New England's not going to be able to do anything. We recognize their vulnerabilities because they've had like 10 or 11 different guys injured, about 5 that are out for the season. We don't know the status of Rob Gronkowski. Danny Amendola could very well end up coming back. And so when you look at it from that perspective, along with who they have on the defensive side of the ball, you hope that Jamie Collins and others will come back and do what they're capable of doing. But in the end, they've got a next man up mentality, and they always seem prepared, like you said, for situational football. Even when Gronk went out, what was one of the first things that Tom Brady did? As distressed as he appeared, bowing his head when he saw how Rob Gronkowski was writhing in pain on the turf. One of the first things he did was throw the football to Chandler Jones. So I look at it from the perspective that they're going to always have somebody that we didn't know about that's going to be capable of stepping up. Last night was an aberration. Consider the inclement weather. Consider the slippery ball. Consider the snow and all of that other stuff. Even though they're accustomed to dealing with it being in Foxborough, at the same time, conditions that are not ideal were not ideal. But in the end, do we see anyone in the AFC definitively gifted enough where you're comfortable saying that they'll march into Foxborough and knock off the New England Patriots in a playoff game? It remains to be seen. And so I look at it from that perspective and I say, okay, this has happened. It's a step back. But again, a lot more pressure is on you when you're unblemished, undefeated, and the expectations are for you to run the table. In this particular instance, I think with the New England Patriots, the fact that they have so many injuries and now they don't have to concern themselves with running the table, I think all of it can lend itself towards benefiting the New England Patriots, especially if Rob Gronkowski is going to end up back in the lineup.
Okay, which leads me to my conclusion here. I will sum it up succinctly, I hope, for you. If Rob Gronkowski is healthy, New England can and I believe will win the Super Bowl. If he is not, for whatever reason, if he's out for an extended period of time, they will not win the Super Bowl. Because if they lose home field, ultimately to the Denver Broncos, I'm not sure that Tom Brady, certainly without Rob Gronkowski, can go back to Denver and win a football game. This has been house of horrors for Tom Brady. He's now fallen to 2-6 at Denver. Everything just seems to go the wrong way in Denver for Tom Brady. It goes the wrong way for a lot of quarterbacks in Denver, but especially Tom Brady. So, look, last night he was throwing passes to people named Asante Cleveland and Keyshawn Martin
yes.
and Chris Harper, who muffed the punt. These are undrafted kids, okay?
Yeah.
All of them undrafted. You can get away with that. Tom Brady is so great. He can get away with that if he has number 87 to occupy two of the defenders. And Stephen A. is right. You just saw Brady's face fell when Gronkowski went down. And my only hope when he went down was that he was not connected with the turf, so it wasn't a state, where his foot was stuck in the grass and he got hit sideways. It was a whiplash move and more of a hyperextension, but it can still, I've seen ACLs go that way. You have too.
That's right.
And so he's had an ACL before, and he thought it was gone or he wouldn't have been pounding the turf, right?
So you saw it, yeah.
And then, fortunately, via Adam Schefter, we're hearing from inside the Patriots sources saying it doesn't seem that serious. Now, I'm waiting for the MRI result to say it's not that serious. Could it be a bad sprain that would keep him out for 4 to 6? It could be. And without Amendola, without Edelman, I don't know when or if either will be back and how strong they'll be when they come back. And yet, they also lost Dante Hightower last night. He's their best run stopper because he runs so well sideline to sideline. You don't have Jamie Collins, the best athlete on defense, the best playmaker. So finally, C.J. Anderson was unleashed. After Hightower went out. I read the numbers to start the show. They ran wild on the Patriots defense, which, by the way, was leading the league in points allowed coming into that game.
And that's what concerns me more than actually the offensive injuries. I think they'll find a way to get by offensively. Every time they're in a great run, what seems to let them down is defense. Maybe a fourth quarter touchdown.
I agree.
Seen against the Giants.
All right.
Those losses in Denver. It all comes down to Bill Belichick, how he's able to design a defense to stop Peyton Manning or a mobile quarterback. In this instance, a versatile quarterback where you can move the launch pad, buy more time for your receivers to find spots downfield. I think that's really the issue there.
Right, so here's the question for both of you, all of you. Is Denver going to face a quarterback quandary? Is Peyton going to say, I'm okay in 2 or 3 weeks or whenever it is? I don't know, because it's feeling like they have privately committed. It just has the feel that they're going forward with this young man. And he's a young man, but he played like a man last night. So could they win the AFC with Brock Osweiler from your school, right?
ASU. And the game plan works better Denver-wise with Brock, the running game, because you have to be able to come off a play action and roll the pocket. He's athletic enough to roll the pocket and escape pressure to give his guys opportunities downfield. So the offense runs better with him. I think you're going to come to an opportunity maybe week 4, maybe in 4 or 5 weeks where Peyton says, hey, I'm ready to go. And there's going to be a question right there.
I agree.
And you have to make the correct decision for the football team. And Brock is the better fit for the Denver Broncos. I'm not sure if Elway or whoever to make that decision. That's what it's going to come down to.
All right.
It appears that Brock might be better right now because his arm is stronger and he's obviously healthier. But let's see what he does over the next few weeks. That's number one. Number two, I wanted to go back to the Gronk hit because there were some questions as to whether or not it was dirty. I didn't feel the hit was dirty at all. I didn't feel that defender went too low at all. And I applauded Brady for pointing that out, that in today's game, the way it's called, you have no choice as a defender but to go low. It's unfortunate. He said what I've been saying for years, Skip. If you ask these players what they would prefer, they'd rather go high than low.
No doubt.
And so that's what it is too. So I mean, I just think it's one of those situations, and that's what concerns me about Gronk. He's not just big, Skip. He's tall. The people, I actually have gotten to a point, guys, where I think the guys that are safest in football are the short guys. Anybody that's tall, that got some legs under them, you got problems. Because everybody can hit low. And I think that's one of the biggest problems that the New England Patriots have to. I mean, Chandler Jones and Gronkowski and all these boys, they got some height on them. I think that's the problem. The Edelmans and Amendolas of the world, they got to worry about the headshot.
You're okay with the hit, right?
Yeah, I am. I mean, because we forced that area now. It's prevalent. So defenders have to find a way to get the big guy down. And I know some of the big guys would want you to go a little higher, obviously. Just unfortunate for.
Did you generally hit higher in your day?
No, I would go right under the knee. I would go right under the knee and make the offensive player basically helicopter. And that was kind of a way that you can take out a bigger offensive player without injuring.
Did you ever cause an injury inadvertently?
No, never. I went sometimes too low where the guy thought he had to jump over me.
Yeah.
You know, so you always have to make sure you're protecting yourself. But you know what? When you're on the football field, you are thinking about that offensive player. And you have maybe went to school with them or had some relationship with them. You don't want to hurt him either. So.
But you also got to remember, Skip, that Eric was out there trying to tackle people as opposed to lunging at them and trying to hit them. And I think that's one of the things that you have to monitor and watch out for when you're looking at defenders. It's rare that you see guys, when they're going low, literally try to wrap their arms around the leg even if they go low. What they're doing is they're lunging their body into that area, which makes it worse, in my opinion.
Okay, I want you both on the record. Who wins home field advantage throughout the playoffs in the AFC?
Patriots.
I'm going Patriots also.
Thank you.
And now, for Geico's edition of Stuff Found in Your Car, we go inside your side door pocket.
Hello, yes, the crumpled receipt with gum in it. From your anniversary dinner, you sprang for expensive wine, your server was Beth. That dinner was a couple $100. Money you could get back if you switched to Geico and saved hundreds of dollars on your car insurance. I bet you'd save that receipt. Frame it even. But really, where did I go wrong? Was it the corkage fee?
Geico. 15 minutes could save you 15% or more on car insurance. Visit geico.com today.
Staying in the NFL, could a change of luck be what Indy really needs? The Colts beat the Bucs yesterday and are tied for first place in the AFC South thanks to one Matt Hasselbeck. Colts are currently 4-0 this season when Hasselbeck starts, and 2-5 when Andrew Luck starts. Hasselbeck also has a total QBR of 72 compared to Luck, whose total QBR is just 48. Skip, are the Colts better off with Hasselbeck?
Stephen A. Smith, I have half kidded you about this previous weeks on this show of this football season. Now I'm fully serious about it. Yes, they are better with the 40-year-old quarterback who, by the way, is playing like he's 30 years of age. And Molly just read the numbers, and I can't speak any louder than 72 QBR for the 40-year-old, and the young man who's a little out of luck right now is 48, 72 to 48. Hasselbeck, 7 touchdown passes to only 2 interceptions with 0 lost fumbles. Luck so far this year, 15 touchdowns to 12 interceptions and a lost fumble. So that means 13 turnovers for Andrew Luck and only 2 for Matt Hasselbeck. And we know that Andrew Luck has increasingly turned into a turnover machine over his 4 seasons as his QBR has fallen season after season after season, gone straight down. I'm sorry. I'm still, look, I'm not saying Andrew Luck's a bust because he's clearly a very talented kid, but he still plays like a kid to me. He still tries to do too much. And Matt Hasselbeck, who did throw 42 times yesterday, so it's not like they're taking the game. That's not game manager kind of stuff. They're saying, hey, you got to go win this game for us, and he won another game. They look like a football team with Matt Hasselbeck at the controls. They don't turn the ball over. They play efficient football, and it propels the defense, too, because the defense doesn't have many quick changes with Matt, the sudden changes, they call it, where you get shocked into having to run right back on the field and defend after a long return after a big interception from Andrew Luck. Football's a turnover game. You just can't win with turnovers. In the end, they will get you. And they've been getting the Colts when Andrew Luck has been playing. And I know they won a lot of games last year and got to the AFC Championship game. But Andrew Luck went up in smoke in that game, the Deflategate game. They lost 28-0 in the second half. So, yeah, I'm sorry, but I'm just going on eye test and stat test right now, right here, going forward. They're better with Matt Hasselbeck at quarterback.
Well, let's analyze a couple of things, Skip Bayless, because I don't I'm not refuting what you're saying because the facts are the facts, and unlike you, I don't try to slant the facts in my direction just to buffer and augment my argument. I'm going to accept them as they are.
How exactly
the numbers that Matt
I do that?
Hasselbeck are putting forth, you're the most gifted individual on the planet Earth at doing that.
I'm Kobe-esque.
But in fairness to you, yes, you are.
Yeah.
But in fairness to you, you're absolutely right from a statistical perspective that they do look better with Matt Hasselbeck. He's more efficient. The QBR and the quarterback rating prove that. He keeps the turnovers at a minimum. They seem a bit more structured with Matt Hasselbeck because rather than relying on his skill to carry the day, they say to him, this is who you are. This is what we want you to do. And obviously, being the veteran that he is, he's very comfortable around it. I'd have to know more and lean on some of the NFL aficionados to tell me from a schematic perspective what they're doing with Andrew Luck compared to what they're doing with Matt Hasselbeck to really dissect it more astutely. But on its face, looking at the facts as they are, I can't argue with what you're saying. What I would like to remind you is this. When I think about Matt Hasselbeck, 4-0 as a starter, you said. Jacksonville, the Texans when they were really struggling.
Yep.
They look damn good now, though.
They do.
Okay.
4 straight wins.
Then you had Atlanta while they've been nosediving. They lost again yesterday.
But
they lost last week to Indy.
At Atlanta, it's not bad.
Wait a minute. They won. I'm saying they. Well, I'm just saying. I said Atlanta's nosediving.
Sure, they are.
I'm just talking about the level of competition. So you got Jacksonville, Houston when they were highly suspect, trying to figure out their things before Bill O'Brien is putting forth Coach of the Year caliber stuff right now because he's really showing what he's worth right now. We were critical of him early in the season. Bill O'Brien's doing a hell of a job over the last several weeks with the Houston Texans. But prior to that, that's when Hasselbeck beat them. Before that, they beat Jacksonville. Last week, Atlanta, as they're nosediving, he beat them. And yesterday, although Tampa was 5-5, you are going up against a rookie quarterback and a team that's on the come up but not quite there as of yet. So that's who he has beaten. When I look at Andrew Luck, you go up and you open the season at Rex Ryan in Buffalo against Rex Ryan. With that defense, that's a tall order to have at that particular juncture. Your very next game is against the New York Jets. With that defense, that's a tall order to have. I'm looking at New England. You beat them, okay? But you also, there was no excuse to lose to the New Orleans Saints, so you got me there. And, of course, you lost to Carolina in overtime. So I look at those things. If you're Andrew Luck, 3 of your 5 losses, Buffalo, New York, Carolina. I can't look at that and say, wait a minute, I'm just going to ignore that. So I look at Andrew Luck, and clearly he's had a rough year. But the upside is what we're talking about here. This year, Matt Hasselbeck has looked better. I can sit there and give you the quality of opposition that he's going against compared to Andrew Luck. I will not refute to you that Matt Hasselbeck looks better. But I still would not go to him if it's your future that you care about. Because if it's your future that you care about, how much are you helping Andrew Luck by having him sit down and watching Matt Hasselbeck do his thing because he's flowing right now? I don't know if that's the way for Indy to go, but I can understand why people like yourself feel otherwise because Andrew Luck has struggled more than any of us anticipated. And in his first 3 years of the NFL, he was pretty beat up, sacked 100 times, hit an additional 71 to 72 times, and that was before he came into this season. So all of those things considered, I get where you're coming from. I understand it, but Andrew Luck is still my guy.
Okay, now I'm going to slickly reinterpret the facts that you just gave us because I'm going to hark back to, you said Andrew Luck faced that vaunted Rex Ryan defense up at Buffalo in week 1.
The opener.
Okay, it was. Yeah. And then Tom Brady goes in there, I'm pretty sure it was in week 2, and destroyed it. So that defense destroyed Andrew Luck.
That's Tom Brady.
And then Tom Brady destroyed. Well, I'm just saying. I mean, all I've heard from you is how Andrew Luck is Andrew Luck, first ballot Hall of Famer. Well, at some point,
you haven't heard that from me. You haven't heard that from me.
Well,
all I'm saying to you is that he's not Tom Brady. You know, that is just disingenuous and very slick on your part because he's not Tom Brady. Now, if Matt Ryan came in there, or Russell Wilson,
Tom Brady threw the biggest party ever thrown in Orchard Park on a defense. He went in there and just annihilated him.
Well, let me make my point. You picked Buffalo to be your wild card spot.
I did.
That
I'm
was
still
in
hanging
large
in there.
part because of that. Well, let me finish.
Yep.
That was in large part because of their defense. And you talked about coming into Rex's house for the opener. It was hype. It was hype personified because of how hostile that environment was, because it was the beginning of a new era. To open the season, it wasn't the first time the Indianapolis Colts in the Chuck Pagano era have opened the season with a loss, particularly on the road against the Buffalo Bills. We understand that. And then week 2, who comes in there? The reigning, defending Super Bowl champion, who's going to go down as one of the greatest quarterbacks in the history of the game. I just think it's unfair for you to use that analogy of Tom Brady coming in the following week. We know the two don't compare right now. We know that.
All right, but it was just an interesting measuring stick for a fourth-year quarterback heralded by most analysts as the next guy, the next it player.
As a guy who will be there in 15 to 20 years, we may be talking about him this way. But right now, I'll go a step further for you, Skip Bayless.
I'm not
right
seeing
now.
that.
Russell Wilson is better than Andrew Luck right now.
All right, real quickly, the next 2 weeks in this division, they're now tied, right?
Houston creeping in.
And here comes Houston. I get you. But Houston, speaking of Rex Ryan's defense and my wild card pick, the Houston Texans go to Buffalo next Sunday. Then they return home for a game that has been flexed to Sunday night against those New England Patriots. Losable games both. In fact, my gut feeling is Houston will lose both those games, which would put Matt Hasselbeck in the driver's seat in the division because they're at Pittsburgh, perhaps with no Ben Roethlisberger. Perhaps it's Landry Jones if Ben's in the concussion protocol, as we know, and I'm not sure how that's going to factor out. Then they go to Jacksonville. No gimme for anybody, but again, I think they could win those 2 games.
The Colts have an easier schedule, no question,
Yep.
I think, than Houston. But Houston's got a chance. Up next, Adrian
By the way,
Peters.
Skip, Molly.
Yeah, sorry, Stephen.
No, go ahead. I was just going to say on another note, isn't it amazing how right Tomlin was about pumping the brakes on all the Landry Jones hoopla after he came in reserve weeks ago?
Yeah.
I mean, don't even get me started with that.
I've been pumping those brakes for about 6 years
Yes,
as an
you did.
OU fan. Thank you.
Got the emergency
You pumped
brake
it
up.
immediately after Tomlin did. Yeah.
All right. Do the Falcons have a quarterback problem? After a 5-0 start, they've lost 5 of their last 6 games. And their loss to the Vikings at the Georgia Dome yesterday, it was the 5th time Matt Ryan has thrown at least 2 interceptions in a game. Stephen A., what's your takeaway from Atlanta's loss to the Vikings?
Well, my takeaway from their loss is that Matt Ryan is not as big time as I thought he was. I mean, he's coming up small in key pivotal moments. There were a couple of interceptions that he threw yesterday that were ill-advised. Simply no excuse for it. He's too experienced to know that. And then also I look at them, and obviously you got a guy like Adams who's been out, and you expected a lot from him because he was running the football effectively, especially considering what he did against Dallas earlier in the season. And you look at them now, and it just seems relatively pedestrian. I mean, Julio Jones has 5 receptions for 56 yards. Your leading receiver's got 69 yards, and his name is Jacob Tamme. He used to be with the Broncos. I just expected a lot more from the Atlanta Falcons, and I'm not seeing it right now. And to be quite honest with you, I'm quite shocked by it. I expected more. They obviously started out 5-0. I thought this team was going to win the NFC South, and ever since then, they lost to the New Orleans Saints. Then they beat Tennessee, but then they've lost 4 straight now to Tampa, San Francisco, Indy, and Minnesota. One would argue they were supposed to win at least 3 of those games. And so to lose all of those games and to now have 5 losses on your docket, I mean, I don't even know if they deserve to make the playoffs right now, and I'm not certain that they would, especially with Seattle coming up the rear right now. They're the 13th ranked defense. They rank 15th against the pass. There's nothing that's awful about them under the leadership of Quinn, but they don't seem to be the team that I thought that they would be right now. It just seems like something is missing in terms of identity. They seem to be searching to find themselves, Skip, instead of knowing who they are and going out there like Rough Riders. And Matt Ryan and Julio Jones are supposed to offset all of that. But that's not what's happening right now. And Matty Ice looks like some dude named Matt Ryan. He doesn't look like anything special. He just looks like a very, very average quarterback. And the team is sinking with those average performances.
Quick thought on each of the teams we're talking about in this game, the winner and the loser. Matty Ice.
Yeah.
I've said so many times to you on this show, I'm never quite sold on Matt Ryan. He's always on the edge of elite, but not quite there. And I feel like Falcon fans, just when they think it's safe to give him their hearts, he breaks their hearts. And now he's breaking them week after week because that fandom thought, man, we're back, we're in charge, we got Dan Quinn, he's the toast of the league. No, not at this point. It's about what's missing is in the quarterback. Now, on the other side, it's ironic. What's missing is also in the quarterback in a good way because Teddy Bridgewater, this is my favorite stat of the day, Teddy Bridgewater is 6-0 when he throws for under 200 yards this year. So they don't need him to do anything. In fact, in those 6 wins, he's 3 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. They just need him to game manage, to make smart throws on time because they are number 1 in the NFL in rushing because of that, who's that Peterson guy, you know, that Adrian Peterson guy? And they are number 2 in the NFL in points allowed. They run it and they stop you. And it's a great conservative formula as long as North Turner can keep Teddy Bridgewater sort of safely between the lines, not overexpose him, and it's working. It didn't work against Aaron Rodgers and company up at Minnesota. That was a fail on their part. They weren't ready for that game, but they're 8-3, which is pretty impressive.
Yep.
Way to go, Mike Zimmer.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. I totally agree with you. When you got the number 2 defense and the number 1 rushing attack, that says something.
Yep.
But I'm looking at Atlanta right now. I expected more from Matty Ice.
Yep.
230 yards yesterday, 280
it's
last
not good enough.
week.
Nope.
It's just not good enough.
Nope.
It's just not good enough.
I am with you.
And I was optimistic for the Falcons this season, but the 3rd consecutive season they have at least a 4-game losing streak. Do the Falcons have a quarterback problem? After a 5-0 start, they've lost 5 of their last 6 games, and their loss to the Vikings at the Georgia Dome yesterday, it was the 5th time Matt Ryan has thrown at least 2 interceptions in a game. Stephen A., what's your takeaway from Atlanta's loss to the Vikings?
Well, my takeaway from their loss is that Matt Ryan is not as big time as I thought he was. I mean, he's coming up small in key pivotal moments. There were a couple of interceptions that he threw yesterday that were ill-advised. Simply no excuse for it. He's too experienced to know that. And then also I look at them, and obviously you got a guy like Adams who's been out, and you expected a lot from him because he was running the football effectively, especially considering what he did against Dallas earlier in the season. And you look at them now, and it just seems relatively pedestrian. I mean, Julio Jones has 5 receptions for 56 yards. Your leading receiver's got 69 yards, and his name is Jacob Tamme. He used to be with the Broncos. I just expected a lot more from the Atlanta Falcons, and I'm not seeing it right now. And to be quite honest with you, I'm quite shocked by it. I expected more. They obviously started out 5-0. I thought this team was going to win the NFC South, and ever since then, they lost to the New Orleans Saints. Then they beat Tennessee, but then they've lost 4 straight now to Tampa, San Francisco, Indy, and Minnesota. One would argue they were supposed to win at least 3 of those games. And so to lose all of those games and to now have 5 losses on your docket, I mean, I don't even know if they deserve to make the playoffs right now, and I'm not certain that they would, especially with Seattle coming up the rear right now. They're the 13th ranked defense. They rank 15th against the pass. There's nothing that's awful about them under the leadership of Quinn, but they don't seem to be the team that I thought that they would be right now. It just seems like something is missing in terms of identity. They seem to be searching to find themselves, Skip, instead of knowing who they are and going out there like Rough Riders. And Matt Ryan and Julio Jones are supposed to offset all of that. But that's not what's happening right now. And Matty Ice looks like some dude named Matt Ryan. He doesn't look like anything special. He just looks like a very, very average quarterback. And the team is sinking with those average performances.
Quick thought on each of the teams we're talking about in this game, the winner and the loser. Matty Ice. I've said so many times to you on this show, I'm never quite sold on Matt Ryan. He's always on the edge of elite, but not quite there. And I feel like Falcon fans, just when they think it's safe to give him their hearts, he breaks their hearts. And now he's breaking them week after week because that fandom thought, man, we're back, we're in charge, we got Dan Quinn, he's the toast of the league. No, not at this point. It's about what's missing is in the quarterback. Now, on the other side, it's ironic. What's missing is also in the quarterback in a good way, because Teddy Bridgewater, this is my favorite stat of the day, Teddy Bridgewater is 6-0 when he throws for under 200 yards this year. So they don't need him to do anything. In fact, in those 6 wins, he's 3 touchdowns to 4 interceptions. They just need him to game manage, to make smart throws on time, because they are number 1 in the NFL in rushing because of that, who's that Peterson guy, you know, that Adrian Peterson guy, and they are number 2 in the NFL in points allowed. They run it and they stop you, and it's a great conservative formula as long as North Turner can keep Teddy Bridgewater sort of safely between the lines, not overexpose him. And it's working. It didn't work against Aaron Rodgers and company up at Minnesota. That was a fail on their part. They weren't ready for that game, but they're 8-3, which is pretty impressive.
Yep.
Way to go, Mike Zimmer.
Well, it's interesting. Yeah. I totally agree with you. When you got the number 2 defense and the number 1 rushing attack, that says something.
Yep.
But I'm looking at Atlanta right now. I expected more from Matty Ice.
Yep.
230 yards yesterday, 280
it's
last
not good enough.
week.
Nope.
It's just not good enough.
Nope.
It's just not good enough.
I am with you.
And I was optimistic for the Falcons this season, but the 3rd consecutive season they have at least a 4-game losing streak. Up next, Odell Beckham makes another spectacular catch on Sunday, but is it better than his infamous one-hander last season? Stick around. This is First Take.
Can I kick it? Yes, we can. Can I kick it? Yes, we can. Can I kick it? Yes, we can. Can I kick it?
First Take is brought to you by Snickers. Snickers satisfies. First Take is brought to you by Snickers. Snickers satisfies.
The one bright spot for some of us yesterday, Odell Beckham put on a show in a losing effort, making a diving one-handed catch for a TD. Everyone comparing it to last season's fingertip catch against the Cowboys. Stephen A., which ODB catch do you like better?
The fingertip catch against the Cowboys. As far as I'm concerned, there's no comparison whatsoever. That catch against the Cowboys last year may have been the greatest catch that I've ever seen. And by the way, Odell Beckham Jr. is big time. Week after week after week, for the most part, this dude finds a way to have an impact. He is legit and he is special.
Okay, but the one thing I do not like about this question is we are talking about two all-time great catches that both came in losses, and it's like the spectacular dunks that I always see, but they lost. So I got to frame it with that. But I'm with you, Stephen A., on the catch. To just lay out and get a hand underneath and then another hand underneath, not even in the same ballpark with the falling back, acrobatic, one hand over the head snag of a ball I thought he had no chance of getting on my guy Brandon Carr. That's the greatest catch to this moment that I have ever seen. And I said it at that moment, and I stand by it. So I'm not going to – I don't know why everybody has to say that the last was the greatest, because everybody loves to –
prisoner of the moment.
Rush to that judgment, right?
Listen, Of course it's better because it was against the Cowboys. And thank you for mentioning they were both losses.
Yes.
I appreciate that. In case anyone –
remember that.
In case anyone forgot.
Molly and Skip. Can y'all save the argument for each other, arguing with each other on the air? That's not good. That's not good.
Thanks so much for joining us. Catch First Take, as always, weekdays, 10 a.m. Eastern in the rear at 1 p.m. Eastern on ESPN2.